Call them now and talk to Monica at 081 270 3727 or the office number 083 2888 400. Eagle FM, the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud. So
not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have a capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past, and it's not something Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
Lipuranengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo tuto ingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile. Oshafafana nongeshe faili mehola mo ihoetike kovano ile koshiwana. Onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano. Okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna ebitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondadoi nawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshefa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamoiri nawa ningepata fanona Monica ko Eagle FM onora tatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile ko derewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
You are now tuned in to the Eagle Sports Zone.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great edition of the Eagle Sports Zone. As per usual, I am your host, Hende, and I will be with you until 8 p.m. this evening on this chilly evening here in the capital, coming to you live from our studio in Windhoek. You are tuned into Eagle FM, Namibia's #1 talk radio station, and this is another great edition of the Eagle Sports Zone. As usual, you can tune into us via traditional frequency, or you can tune into us via our mobile application. That is the Eagle FM mobile application that is free to download right now. You can download on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. Cost you a total of $0 and 0 Namibian cents. Alternatively, you can also tune into us via our website. That's www.eaglefm.com.na. And if you happen to miss your favorite program on Eagle FM, whatever time of the year, the day, whenever that program occurred, if it aired live here on Eagle FM, you will be able to catch up and listen to it in our podcast section that is both on the website and the Eagle FM mobile application. And of course, we are also live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on X. So if you want to send us any questions, any comments, any concerns, anything you want to share about anything in sport really, but today we're talking about the World Cup and Africa's involvement in the 2026 FIFA World Cup, Africa's historic involvement in this 2026 FIFA World Cup. Alternatively, the number in the studio is also 083-288-401. That's 083-288-401 if you'd like to call into the studio with any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to share. Maybe you're a Bafana supporter, you're excited for what's going to happen tonight against Canada in the round of 32. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Eagle Sports Zone. And before we get into our topics for the day, we are going to discuss some local sporting news as we always do here on the Eagle Sports Zone. And we will begin the Eagle Sports Zone with staying on topic for the day, that is football, local football, that is, we will be going to the NFA Cup that concluded over the weekend, where we had Unam FC up against KK Palace on the men's side of things, and the clever boys, that is Unam, took that 2-1, being crowned as the 2026 NFA Cup champions. They beat KK Palace 2-1 and walking away with a $400,000 cash prize. KK Palace, as runners-up, received 200,000 Namibian dollars in cash prize. Finishing in third place was Okanja United, and they received a payout of 100,000 Namibian dollars. They beat Mighty Gunners on penalties. That is 10 goals, or that is 10-9. They beat them on penalties. So if you're a supporter of any of those four teams that I mentioned, call in, comment on Facebook, comment on YouTube, comment on X. Let me know how you feel about how your team did this year in the NFA Cup. On the ladies' side of things, the Mighty Gunners ladies, who finished second in the FNB Women's Super League, they got some silverware this year. And that is the NFA Cup. On the women's side of things, they beat Comas Nampol ladies 4-0 in the final, winning 150,000 Namibian dollars. The Comas Nampol ladies, who finished second, walked away with 70,000 Namibian dollars. And then Julinho Athletics, their ladies claimed the bronze medal and walked away with 40,000 Namibian dollars in cash prize. Now, there we can see the clear discrepancy in the prize money between the men's and women's game. So the women's game still on the rise, but hopefully, starting next year already, we will get to a point where the prize money is equal. There's a few leagues and there's a few national team setups where that has been implemented, where the men and women earn the same amount of money. I mean, we could do a whole show on prize money discrepancies between men's and women's sports, especially for team sports, but that's a topic for another day. But I personally am of the opinion that they should 100% be equal, but it's a gradual process. We'll get there. So in terms of individual prizes on the ladies' side of things, we had Mighty Gunners goalkeeper Melissa Matthews. She won the goalkeeper of the tournament, walking away with a $10,000 cash prize. Then the player of the tournament went to Alina Alwendo, also from the Mighty Gunners. She walked away with a 15,000 Namibian dollars in cash prize. Moving along, we go to rugby, where a developmental side, so to say, that is the Velvetia's Invitational 15s. They beat Zambia in an international rugby fixture over at the Hage Geingob Stadium here in Windhoek with a resounding score of 71-12. So very confident performance from our boys playing in the Velvetia side, taking care of business against Zambia. And on some continental news, we had our very own famous long distance runner, that is Lavinia Haitope. She successfully defended her Nelson Mandela Bay half marathon title, delivering yet another great performance this year to retain her title as champion. This was on a Saturday morning over in South Africa. So huge congratulations. A huge congratulations to Miss Lavinia for representing the nation well when it comes to running. And then we have more round of applause to give out. That is to a young lady, that is Miss Juanivia Besaidano. She was crowned the ITF World Under 18 J30 doubles champion over in Lusaka, that is in Zambia, in tennis. So she claimed another title to add to her growing tennis, trophy cabinet. And then in athletics, on the athletic side of things, we had some youngsters representing the nation well, that is in athletics, with Joshua Titus winning silver for Team Namibia in the boys under 19 1,500 meter event that is at the World Youth Games over in Gothenburg, Sweden. All the way in Scandinavia, doing well. And then on the ladies' side of things, we had Miss Lalik Adam, who won the gold medal in the girls under 14 shot put event that is also at the World Youth Games in Gothenburg, Sweden. So round of applause to our young athletes representing the nation well, all the way in Sweden. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today on the Eagle Sports Zone, as I promised, we are here to discuss Africa's incredible performance so far at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. If you were listening to the Eagle Sports Zone maybe a week or 2 weeks ago, we discussed a topic that I received mixed reviews to, and that is the lack of African merchandise on the streets and on the shelves of Namibia, in Windhoek in particular. I can't speak for the other towns, but I'm confident that what happens in Windhoek happens in the rest of the country. So in that article, I discussed some of the reasons as to why, we live in Africa, but all the merchandise, all the teams that we can support in the stores is all European stores. I mean, there's German flags in abundance, there's Argentinian flags in abundance, Brazilian flags in abundance, French flags in abundance, not Italian, they didn't qualify. I saw England flags in abundance, and obviously South Africa as well, knowing that most of our shops come from there, so it's natural that we have South African apparel here. But my whole point of the article was, why don't we have African merchandise available in Africa? In the SADC region, where we have 2 countries representing us at this year's FIFA World Cup, that is South Africa and DR Congo. South Africa explained why we have their apparel here. So out of the 10 countries, at the very least, we have one, that is our neighbor, South Africa. But that one is kind of by force almost. But DR Congo, who have been making history at this World Cup, first World Cup appearance since 1974, first time qualifying to the knockout stage, first goals that they're scoring at the World Cup, first win at the World Cup. And I'm sure many football lovers have fallen in love with this side. But it is close to impossible for me as a football fan to be able to go into the stores and find DR Congo apparel. And in the opinion here of the Eagle Sports Zone, it shouldn't be that way. We should have this kind of apparel in abundance. But, we did a whole show on that. So if you'd like to listen to that, simply go to the podcast section of the Eagle FM website and the Eagle FM mobile application, and you will be able to dive into that conversation. And you can read the article as well on the Villager website. That is www.thevillager.com.na. So we will take a brief look at Africa's participation in the 2020 in the FIFA World Cup in general. We'll look at how Africa has done since the 1930 World Cup. When was the first time Africa participated at the World Cup? What's the furthest Africa has gone at the World Cup? And we will tie it all together with what's happening now. So before we get into that, I would like to reiterate, this is a historic World Cup for Africa, right? It's the first time ever that we're having 10 teams in the FIFA World Cup. Of course, this is an expanded format of the World Cup. The World Cup is usually only 32 teams. But this year, since 1998, actually, it's been 32 teams. The World Cup started with only 13 teams. Then it moved to 16. Then it moved to 24 teams. And then in 1998, they said, let's make it 32 teams. And now, and for the foreseeable future, it will be 48 teams, which is why now we have more teams from everywhere else in the world, but Africa in particular participating at the World Cup. So it's the first time Africa is this well represented at the World Cup. And then what happens when Africa is this well represented at the World Cup? 9 of the 10 teams advance to the knockout stage of the World Cup, something we've never seen before ever. We have teams like Cape Verde. First time in the World Cup, what do? Qualify for the knockout stage. DR Congo, essentially their first time in the world in the World Cup. What do? They win, they score goals, and they qualified to the knockout stages for the very first time. South Africa qualifies to the knockout stage for the very first time. Believe it or not, Ivory Coast qualifies for the knockout stage for the very first time. Egypt, intuitively one would think we see Egypt as a powerhouse on the continent, but it's also their first time qualifying for the knockout stage at the World Cup. Cape Verde I mentioned, so plenty of history being made in that front. But I would want to talk about now, when is the first time Africa participated at the FIFA World Cup? The very first time was in the second World Cup, actually. And that is 1934. Egypt participated in that World Cup. They didn't do well. But between 1934 and 1966, the year that England won the World Cup for the first and only time, and it was also the only year, surprisingly as well, that they hosted the World Cup. But I digress. That was the second World Cup where an African nation participated at the World Cup. That is 1970, excuse me, not 1966, 1970. That World Cup that was hosted in Mexico. And the nation that participated then was Morocco. Then 1974, that is when Zaire, today known as DR Congo, participated in the World Cup. And then from then on, 1978, again, we only had one representative. That was Tunisia, who didn't do well at this World Cup at all. Then we moved to 1982. From 1982 until 2026, Africa has had at least 2 representatives or more at the World Cup. So it started in 1982 when we had Cameroon and Algeria. Then in 1986, we had Morocco and Algeria. 1990, we had Cameroon and Egypt. And then from 1994 onwards, it was minimum 3 or more. So it began with Cameroon, Morocco, and Nigeria. Then went on and on and on and on. And then, excluding the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the most number of teams that we've had at a World Cup was in 2010. That was primarily due to, of course, South Africa being hosts. So it was South Africa plus 5 other nations, which were Cameroon, Nigeria, Algeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. So, when it comes to the African nation that's made it the furthest at the World Cup, as you may or may not know, there was Morocco in the previous World Cup. The team that some say are the Brazilians of Africa. They had a stellar World Cup, finishing 4th actually at the 2022 FIFA World Cup over in Qatar. And some more of our best finishers include Morocco as well, reaching the round of 16 in 1986. Cameroon reaching the quarterfinals in 1990. Nigeria have reached the round of 16 in 1994, 98, and 2014. Senegal, who made history at this World Cup by becoming the first African country to score 5 goals at a FIFA World Cup when they beat Iraq 5-0 to advance to the round of 32 as one of the best third-place finishers. Their best finish was a quarterfinal in 2002, which is the same World Cup where they famously beat France in the group stages. Then we had, they also made it to the round of 16, obviously in 2002 as well. Then Ghana, their best finishes were a quarterfinal in 2006, quarterfinal in 2020, and Algeria, their best finish was a round of 16 in 2014. So other than that, what we're experiencing today, and hopefully Bafana will make more history tonight by reaching the quarterfinals, the round of 16, excuse me. This is their first time reaching the knockout stages. So with the expanded World Cup comes an additional round of knockout fixtures. So more history that Africa has made at this World Cup. There's no continent has qualified more countries to the knockout stage than Africa. As we know, Africa, 90%, 9 out of 10 teams have qualified for the knockout stages. The only team that didn't qualify from the 10 that made it was Tunisia, who, by their standards, had an abysmal World Cup. So bad that they had to fire their coach after the first match. But to give you some perspective, Europe, 81% of their teams qualified for the knockout stages. That's 13 out of 16 teams. Asia, only 22% of their teams qualified for the knockout stage. That's 2 out of 9 teams. North America, that's 3 out of 6 teams. 50% of their teams qualified for the knockout stages. And South America, 5 of their 6 teams, which works out to 83% qualified for the knockout stages. And then Oceania or Australia, depending on who you ask, they qualified 0 of the 1 teams participating. So adding on to Africa's historic participation and contribution to this 2026 FIFA World Cup, we'll take it back to the qualifiers, where Italy's head coach
Großartige Neuigkeiten. Imba ist jetzt noch besser geworden. Wir haben brandneue Funktionen hinzugefügt, um dein Erlebnis noch reibungsloser, schneller und leistungsstärker zu machen als je zuvor. Bereit, das volle Potenzial von Imba freizuschalten? Erhalte alle exklusiven Funktionen für nur 36 Namibia-Dollar pro Monat. Oder spare noch mehr mit unserem speziellen Abonnementplänen. 5% Rabatt bei einem 3-Monats-Abonnement, 10% Rabatt bei einem 6-Monats-Abonnement oder 25% Rabatt bei einem 12-Monats-Abonnement. Wähle den Plan, der am besten zu dir passt und genieße alles, was Imba zu bieten hat, zu einem unschlagbaren Preis. Imba, where the world congregates. Lade es herunter und abonniere noch heute.
Eagle FM, good evening. Not sure what happened there. Do call us back in the studio. The number is 0832 That's 0832 If you have anything from the World Cup you'd like to share, especially from a African perspective. Eagle FM, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, how are you doing today?
Fine, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. What would you like to share with us?
What topic is that?
Today we're talking about Africa's participation at this World Cup, about their historic participation at this World Cup.
Okay.
Seeing that, are you following the World Cup?
Yes, I'm following.
Who are you supporting at this World Cup?
Yes?
Who are you supporting at this World Cup?
I'm supporting South Africa.
South Africa. Yeah. Do you think they're gonna win tonight against Canada?
Yes, I can win even 3-0.
3-0.
Yeah.
It's a bold prediction, but hopefully your prediction does come through. Are there any other African teams that you've been following or been impressed by at this World Cup?
Okay. Just greeting you.
All right. Thank you for calling. Yes, the number in the studio is 0832 888 That's 0832 888 Leave us a comment on our social media as well. As I said, we are live right now on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We are live on X. If you leave us a comment on any of those platforms, I will be able to address those comments, those questions, or even those concerns if you happen to have any. Any concerns here on the Eagle Sports Zone. And so before that commercial break, I was talking about what was happening before a ball was kicked at this World Cup. As I said, this World Cup, before anyone kicked a single ball at this World Cup, Africa already made history because of the number of teams that were participating at this World Cup. But of course, there were a few people that had a problem with this, and a few people that were bold enough to voice their problems with this. And we'll start with Italy's manager, who used to be one of my favorite players, actually, that is Gattuso, who said, and I quote, "In 1994, having 2 African teams was already enough." First of all, before I continue the rest of the quote, I wish I had the opportunity to interview Gattuso, because what do you mean by was already enough? You know, there's certain things he's alluding to there, but I won't put words in his mouth. Then he went on to say, now 9 African nations going to the World Cup feels excessive. My follow-up question to that is why? Why does that feel excessive? Then he went on to say, many won't make any real impact, and FIFA should review this and reduce the slots. Well, Mr. Gattuso, the beautiful thing about the game of football, the beautiful thing about our sport of football is the talking is done on the pitch. And lo and behold, Africa did in fact make real impact. And that is by having 9 out of their 10 teams qualify for the knockout phase. So maybe Mr. Gattuso should have focused on making sure that his side qualify for the World Cup and not been so worried about the number of slots that Africa has. You know, in fact, the number of slots for Africa should increase. Next World Cup, make it 13. Maybe then, you know, we'll see the Brave Warriors in the World Cup. And, you know, speaking of the Brave Warriors, the only African team that didn't make it to the knockout stage of the World Cup was Tunisia. And whose qualifying group was Tunisia in? You guessed it. That is the Brave Warriors. So I don't know if that says something about the Brave Warriors or if that says something about Tunisia. And we also know what happened with Equatorial Guinea in that group. You know, if those, let's call it administrative differences didn't happen, it would probably have been Equatorial Guinea representing Africa from that group and not Tunisia. And who knows, maybe they would have had a better showing than Tunisia. Someone else that had something to say about Africa's increased number of spots at the World Cup was UEFA President Alexander Sefrin, who said, who was speaking to Slovenian media, I believe. He said, we have a lot of matches that are completely uninteresting. And he was referencing the fact that the World Cup has been expanded to 48 teams. And so in response to that statement, SAFA, that is the South African Football Association, they released a joint statement that was co-signed by Cape Verde, Curacao, Jordan, Uzbekistan, DR Congo, Haiti, Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Tunisia. Basically denouncing what the UEFA president had to say in regards to the expansion of the World Cup. You know, many people had this opinion of this World Cup, saying that it's watering down the product. There's too many games. A lot of games won't have any meaning, and those people turned out to be proven wrong. You know, I've had my criticisms of Infantino, that's the FIFA president, in regards to this World Cup. But expanding to 48 teams has been a resounding success, I would say. You know, there's been many fantastic games. I've learned a lot. I didn't know too much about Uzbekistan before this World Cup. I've learned a lot about Uzbekistan. Curacao, I knew a little about, but from this World Cup, I learned even more. And I know I'm not the only one who went through this process. As we always talk about here in the Eagle Sports Zone, the ability of sport to teach us about things outside of sport. As we always say, sport mirrors what's happening in the world. And this World Cup has been an excellent example of that. And it has been an example of what happens when the smaller nations get an opportunity to participate on the stage as well. And the smaller nations participating on the stage as well gives them access to funding that allows them to develop even more. And in a few moments, we'll talk about the prize money of this World Cup and what it will do for nations like Curacao, for nations like Uzbekistan. Because remember when Iceland was in the World Cup, that was 2018, I believe. They haven't been back since. But they're an example of what happens when federations, when countries, when governments decide to spend their funds appropriately when it comes to football development. So before we get into that aspect, let's take a listen to what Johan Visa had to say about what this World Cup means to the Congo in general. Oh, actually, first let's go to Thierry Henry. This is what he had to say about what it means. What Africa's development or Africa's progression in this World Cup means.
World football towards African nations, would you agree?
Yeah, obviously more teams that are going into this competition allows obviously team to have this type of opportunity. And opportunities, shall I say, even if we think about the amount of African teams are in this competition, but not only African teams. At the end of the day, you were talking about guys that can pick two nations, right? If you go to Africa, we're going to talk about Africa, but you also have with the US Balogun playing for you guys. You have Robinson. We have Michael Olise that obviously picked France. So that's the way it is. And obviously in Africa, that's the story. I remember back in the days where I grew up, you have a lot of guys coming from different countries, roots, or whatever it is, born and raised in France or in another country. But now, a lot of the countries in Africa are recruiting those guys way earlier. And by the way, it's about the feeling that you have. I have nothing against them. Go and play for whoever you feel like you should play for. And this is what's happening. Coaches are also, like you take Emers Faye, the coach of Ivory Coast, was born in France, but he picked to play for Ivory Coast, and he's the coach of Ivory Coast. So like I said, I know how those teams are and how good they are. The education that I received is the same education that those guys have received, and it's so nice to see African teams do well.
Thierry,
Yes, there was football legend, football icon Thierry Henry basically echoing what I have been saying here on the Eagle Sports Zone. The gap is closing. The gap is closing. The misconceptions are being broken down. And basically showing us that, when given opportunity, the smaller nations will perform. In Africa in particular, we have a huge pool of talent to choose from, not only on the continent, but in the diaspora as well. The likes of Cape Verde, who majority of their team come from the diaspora. Even Morocco themselves. 2 weeks ago we spoke about Morocco having a full 11 players on the field at one point in their match against Brazil, of the whole squad from goalkeeper to striker not being born in Morocco, but they're representing Morocco at the FIFA World Cup. This is the joke people often make about France, about how their team is basically African. I hear a lot of African people say I'm supporting France because that's basically Africa. So, it's not only Africa that benefits from this. It's something that the sporting world does, the footballing world does. It's something that we need to embrace. And going back to Gattuso, if Italy did the same, embraced people from quote-unquote outside, maybe they wouldn't be sitting at home right now. So let's take a listen to what Johan Wissa, Congo's talisman, who scored Congo's first ever goal at the World Cup in their fixture against Portugal, and then scored two more last night against Uzbekistan, that was, in their 3-1 victory. So let's take a listen to what this World Cup means to DR Congo from a DR Congo player that is Newcastle United's Johan Wissa.
Where we go, these companies, we are proud country, we are proud people. We love our country, we love our national team, we love what we represent. So I think tonight we just show that what it means for us is just to fight, no matter what. And it's not easy in our country. It's a war in East Congo, And every day, every time we wear the shirt, we think about them. So that's why tonight, what you show is just to say that, guys, no matter what, we need to keep going because we want peace, you know. And for them, I just say, okay, you know, thank you. Thank you because we came from far, you know, we came from far, from nothing to be here. You know, there's now like our story with the black pen, and we need to be proud. So thank you very much for all our Congolese who show up tonight, and especially people at home who has been 2 a.m. who don't sleep, but just waiting for this game. So I want them to be proud, and let's take you to them also.
Speaking of 2 a.m., yes, on the continent Visa, we are all watching you guys at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. And he was speaking about Congolese people in particular, in specifically Congolese people, but me as an African, as I said, Congo is part of SADC. I feel an immense level of pride. I feel so happy when DR Congo in particular is doing well at this World Cup. You know, them, Cape Verde, all the African countries, but those two in particular, Cape Verde and DR Congo, their World Cup journey has been a joy to watch. I feel like I'm part of those countries myself, simply from what's happening on the football field. But Wissa alluded to something even bigger. You know how this World Cup is bringing a national pride for the Congolese people in particular. You know, helping them take their minds off any of the struggles that are happening, whether that's in their personal lives or as a country as a whole. He referenced the conflict going on in East Congo. So this is, again, another example of the power of sport, the power of the World Cup in particular. And we'll be back right on the other side of this.
Do you need toiletries and household cleaners? You won't get it cheaper than at USave up to the 7th of June. Get 250mm jars of Vaseline for only 25 Namibian dollars. Smell fresh with Playboy roll-on deodorant for just 18.99 Namibian dollars. Get 2 kilograms of Surf's hand washing powder for just 49.99 Namibian dollars. Get 750ml Sunlight dishwashing liquid for 28.99 Namibian dollars. And get 2 boxes of Cares Maxi sanitary pads for only 12.99 Namibian dollars. USave, where else?
Welcome back to the Eagle Sports Zone.
You are now tuned in to the Eagle Sports Zone.
Welcome back to the Eagle Sports Zone. Today we're talking Africa at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, making history on all levels. You know, history was made for Africa at this World Cup before a single ball was even kicked. And now that the knockout stage is upon us, kicking off in about 2 hours. 2 hours, we have Bafana taking on Canada in the round of 32. And the rest of the round of 32 fixtures, in case you don't know what's happening, after South Africa, Canada, we have Brazil, Japan, then we have Germany, Paraguay, we have Morocco in a tough fixture against the Netherlands, who have been looking good at this World Cup. We have Ivory Coast, the Elephants taking on the Vikings of Norway. That will be a fantastic fixture as well. Then we have France taking on Sweden. We have Mexico taking on Ecuador. England taking on DR Congo. Can you imagine if DR Congo were to knock out England? That would be fantastic. And Mr. Thomas Tuchel, he shouldn't even get on the plane back to England if DR Congo are able to get a result against England, because I can guarantee you, Mr. Tuchel, you will not be safe. Then we have the Lions of Teranga, who started the World Cup off abysmally. You know, they were. I was coming in supporting Senegal in this World Cup. I thought they would pull a Morocco from 2022, you know, reach the semi-final, maybe even a final. Who knows? Especially considering that this is probably the last hurrah for their golden generation, for the older guys in their golden generations. I'm talking about your Koulibalys, I'm talking about your Sadio Manes, probably even Nicolas Jackson. You know, after this, I don't see them participating in another major tournament. The youngsters will take over. That's your Sars, that's your Ndiayes. So it'll be a tough tough test for Senegal, but if they can beat Belgium in the round of 32, then they will be fully back, in my opinion. You know, they got their swagger back against Iraq. As I said, the first African country to score 5 goals in a single match in a World Cup. That record now belongs to Senegal. So let's see what the Lions of Teranga can do on. They play their match on Wednesday evening at 10 o'clock in Namibian time. Then we have USA, the host, taking on Bosnia-Herzegovina. You have Spain, who many see as favorites, taking on Austria. Portugal, who some people, I don't know why, see as favorites as well. They take on Croatia. Speaking of last hurrah, it's also the last hurrah for Croatia in their golden generation. Should have been their last hurrah, actually. A tournament ago already. And then we have Switzerland taking on Algeria. Australia taking on Egypt. Argentina taking on Cape Verde. And last but not least, the Black Stars of Ghana will be taking on Colombia. So 9 opportunities for Africa to advance to the round of 16 would be a first for many African countries. We can only hope for the best for the continent. Now, before we move on to the prize money and the business of the World Cup, I want us to listen to the perspective of a Nigerian journalist who, his name is, this journalist's name is Victor Opone. He was talking about this historic feat and what it means for African football in general. And this interview, he was giving his thoughts on News Central TV. Let's take a listen.
For African teams, we had 10 of them. One of them has miserably crashed out, which we are happy that they are finally, we've let them off that misery. Tunisia, they failed Africa right there. There's also DR Congo out of the tournament, but DR Congo gave it a fight up until the end. But looking at how Africa performed apart from Tunisia, let's imagine we took 9. Are you impressed with the 9 teams that represented?
Well, of course, the fact that the new format allows for a lot of changes is something that I'm happy that we were able to seize and take control of. The fact that South Africa was able to get out of the group stage for the very first time. The fact that we were also able to see the likes of Morocco, assert their place right there. Egypt getting their very first win. Since appearing in 1934, they had not gotten a win. And then they came to this appearance and they said, you are going to do it no matter what. You see what's in front of you. New system, people are struggling to adapt. Let's go out there. Let's use this opportunity to do something. And I appreciate the fact that some of those countries have been able to do that. I don't think I'll remove Tunisia anyways. It's part of our story. And it's what I always tell people, the dynamics of qualification is always different from tournaments itself. Because, Tunisia were one of the first few to qualify for this World Cup. Right. And everybody felt like they were going to go out there and do something. But, it's a different ballgame entirely. When you go into the World Cup, the qualification run is quite a different kettle of fish out there. So kudos to the likes of South Africa, who used, I think they motivated themselves using all of the feedback that they got from other African countries, especially on social media. I noticed that after the first match where they were complaining about it, they readjusted their seatbelts and they got better at how they played and got things done. And I think kudos to South Africa for that. Give us more Amapiano. We love it. Kudos to Morocco for, again, asserting what they were able to assert right here at the World Cup, showing us that it's no fluke that they have been thereabouts in the last few years. And kudos also to Côte d'Ivoire. They are making the best use of the squad that they have. Shout out to MSFA. It's done brilliantly well. And I think we also have to reckon with Cape Verde. Whatever happens, we know that Cape Verde are one of the biggest stories of this World Cup. And you cannot erase that. They have shown resilience. They have shown beauty. They have shown us that there's magic from one corner of the earth. And I think we should appreciate that as one of the success stories, right there, talking about African countries at the World Cup. Pity that Nigeria is not a part, I always say it, we are not a part of this particular, Mondial. And it's so sad because we could have gotten our numbers up. Now we have Morocco getting past our record. Now we have Ghana equaling our record. And now we have to answer questions about Jollof again.
Our West African brothers, they always humor me. So yes, just wanted to give you a perspective of of a fellow journalist on the continent. But now I want to talk about the prize money at this World Cup. It's a historic pool of money, the most FIFA has ever given, naturally, since there are more teams now at the World Cup. And so for those that don't know, every team that participates at the World Cup gets some form of prize money. So even if you go out in the group stage, I'm talking Tunisia, I'm talking Jordan, I'm talking Uzbekistan, I'm talking Scotland, all of you guys that didn't make it to the knockout stages, your minimum prize money allocation is 15 million US dollars. Okay, that works out to around 240 million Namibian dollars. So had the Brave Warriors qualified for the World Cup and lost every match 3-0, 3-0, 3-0 in the group stage, they would still have come home with 240 Namibian dollars. Right? That's how much each group stage exiting team is making. If you make it to the round of 32 and you lose in the round of 32, so if Bafana loses to Canada tonight, they are walking away with 17 million US dollars. That works out to around 272 million Namibian dollars. You know, if you make it to the round of 16, if Bafana beats Canada tonight and they make it to the round of 16, they walk away with 21 million US dollars. That works out to around 336 Namibian dollars. If a team makes it to the quarterfinals, they walk away with 25 million US dollars. That works out to around 400 million Namibian dollars. If the team makes it to the semifinals, if they finish fourth in fourth place, you know, if Morocco replicates what they did in Qatar, they will walk away with a 33 million Namibian dollars. That works out to around 528 million Namibian dollars. The bronze medalists of the competition, they will walk away with 35 million US dollars. That works out to around 560 Namibian dollars. The runners up, so if you make it to the final, you're guaranteed a minimum of 39 million US dollars, and that works out to around 624 million Namibian dollars. You know, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And then if you make it to the final and you end up lifting the trophy, you walk away with 56 million US dollars. That works itself around plus minus 900 million Namibian dollars. So let's say the Brave Warriors had made it, they would have come back with nearly $1 billion Namibian dollars. So the total prize pool for this year's World Cup is 727 million US dollars. That works out to around 11 billion Namibian dollars. You know? It's not a bad purse to collect. And in addition to the prize money, the prize money figures that I was listing now, that includes a grant that FIFA gave of around 1.5 million that they gave to each team. That's for travel expenses, accommodation expenses, whatever they need to spend it on to prepare themselves. So Tunisia, you're walking away with 15 million. The rest of the continent, that's Senegal, that's Ivory Coast, that's Ghana, that's Cape Verde, that's Egypt, that's Algeria, that's who did I leave on? That's DR Congo, that's Ivory Coast, that's South Africa. You all walking away with a minimum of 17 million US dollars. So this is what I'm talking about. These are the funds that I'm talking about that help further develop a nation. So in the next cycle of the World Cup, the one that's being hosted in Spain, Morocco, and Portugal, who's to say that we won't see Cape Verde again? Cape Verde, by the way, everyone's been captivated by how small Cape Verde is, how miraculous their journey has been, and of course, it's been beautiful to witness. But Cape Verde only lost one game. Cape Verde only lost one game out of 10 in their qualifiers to reach the World Cup. So Cape Verde is here on merit. 100% here on merit. They only lost one game, and then they drew 2. They finished top of their group. And this was a group that included Cameroon, who aren't at this year's tournament. Cameroon, one of Africa's biggest footballing giants. And that group included Angola as well, who at least in the COSAFA world are a giant as well. So Cape Verde, they aren't a charity case at the World Cup. They're here on merit. They proved why they should be here. And then in the World Cup itself, by the way, they are undefeated at this World Cup. So the next time Cape Verde loses a match at the World Cup will be their first time losing a match at the World Cup. And this is also their first time playing at the World Cup. So right now, as things stand, Cape Verde have played 3 matches at the World Cup. They drew all 3, but they haven't lost. They don't have a loss on their World Cup resume yet. Not a single one. And so hopefully against Argentina, they'll be able to register probably if that happens. I'm trying to think in my mind if I can think of any other bigger upsets on the World Cup stage than Cape Verde.
Care that helps you care for others. That's the basic mental health first aid course, free for NHP members. You'll learn how to spot early signs of mental or emotional distress in friends, family, or colleagues, and how to guide them to the right support before small struggles become bigger problems. Learn more and register for free at nhp.com.na. T's and C's apply. NHP, rooted in care for you.
Your health, your life, your peace of mind. NHP, we're about you.
lipuranengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo toingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo ihoetike kovano ile koshiwala onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna ebitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondado inawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshe fa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamo ili nawa ningepata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile ko berewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
You are now tuned in to the Eagle Sports Zone.
Welcome back to the Eagle Sports Zone. We were talking about Cape Verde's qualification to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, only losing one match in the qualifiers. And captivating the world, really, in terms of how they've been performing at this World Cup. Now, staying on the business of the World Cup, there's something I want to share about sort of how FIFA does business with some of these World Cup hosting cities, or how FIFA does business when they come to your country and say, we have selected you to host the World Cup. Let's take a listen to this report from a
bill for hosting World Cup games. Well, it keeps most of the revenue. How? Through these secretive contracts it signs with host cities. They're often signed with little debate and kept sealed from the public. In Canada, media outlets, including the Globe, have had to use freedom of information applications to get these contracts released. Here's what Toronto and Vancouver have agreed to. First, these contracts make it clear that all the revenue from these games go to FIFA, from television income to ticket sales. Even concession sales inside the stadium go to FIFA. That's right, even your hot dog. FIFA expects to generate revenues in excess of $13 billion US from this World Cup cycle. Yet it still requires hosts give it special tax exemptions and insure it against any potential financial losses or lawsuits. Meanwhile, Toronto and Vancouver, along with the federal and provincial governments, are on the hook for major costs. The contracts require hundreds of millions of dollars in upgrades to their stadiums to meet FIFA's strict requirements for its global television broadcasts. Toronto is even installing 17,000 temporary seats so that FIFA can sell more tickets. Outside the stadiums, the cities must spend millions to protect the public and FIFA's trademarks. Bylaw officers will patrol a 2-kilometer wide radius around the stadiums looking for anyone trying to cash in on the World Cup who hasn't paid to be a FIFA sponsor. In both cities, it will be the largest police deployment they've ever seen. People who live or work near these sites are going to have to deal with street closures and strict security zones. In Canada, all 3 levels of government are going to spend more than $1.1 billion to host 13 soccer games. That works out to more than $82 million per game, or almost $1 million for every minute that the World Cup is played in this country. But for some politicians, it's worth it. Hosting the World Cup is a political trophy that brings both global prestige and a boom for the tourism sector. FIFA projects that the tournament could contribute as much as $2 billion to Canada's GDP. Critics, including some elected officials, say these deals are far too one-sided. And they say it's part of the reason that 12 of the last 14 World Cups have lost money for their host nations. All of this raises the question of who really benefits from the World Cup financially and whether the cost of hosting these mega events is really worth it.
There we had a report from Canadian media about, the true cost of hosting a World Cup, how FIFA does business, and things of that nature. But I wanted to play that to give you guys some insight. We've spoken a lot here on the Eagle Sports Zone about Namibia hosting things like AFCON and other various international sporting competitions. And something we don't often think about is it costs money to host these things. And in the academic world, in the sports management academic world, there's been a long-standing discussion or debate on whether actually hosting international tournaments of this magnitude, whether it actually benefits your nation or not. And, I've been fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, fortunate enough to having read through some of these studies. And the grand consensus from these academics is there's actually no benefit in a country or a city hosting these mega sporting events. The benefits that the proponents, propose, that is the stimulus of the economy, the added tourism, the amount of money people spend when they come to a country, etc., etc. All of that stuff, according to the academics at least, and as we heard in that short expert that I played, is pretty much negligible in comparison to what the city spends to bring that there. But now, on the other side of things, there has to be some benefit that makes countries, that makes cities always want to be a host of these major tournaments. And one of the reasons for that, as they alluded to, is political. So, it really depends on who you're asking when it comes to, is it worth it for a country to host these mega events? And of course, it makes more sense for countries like the USA who basically just had to plug and play this World Cup. Didn't have to build much additional infrastructure. I mean, you have world-class teams staying at high schools, having their campsites at high schools in the USA, not because they don't have other places to stay, but because some of these American high schools are of a world-class standard, right? So there's not many countries in the world that can host major events without really having to add to their national infrastructure, but the USA is one of them. And it is the first time the USA is hosting it since 1994. So it's the first time many people, one, are getting familiar with the USA, and many people within the USA are getting familiar with the sport of football. Even though they did host it in 1994, as I said. Still surprised that somehow England has only hosted the World Cup once, and that was in 1966. You know, one would think that England would sort of be the home of the World Cup, so to say, but it is the World Cup, so it's good that the world has an opportunity to host the FIFA World Cup. Now we'll look at a report here by the Business of Sports Africa. That's a publication called the Business of Sports Africa. They looked at the numbers of what does it cost for an African to attend the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So what they did is they looked at how much it will cost for a trip to New York, which is where the final will be played in MetLife Stadium, and it's a venue where Senegal and Morocco played majority of their group games. And so this report says that the hotel, the ticket, and the meals cost roughly the same, whether you're flying in from Tunis or whether you're flying in from Johannesburg. The one number that moves is the airfare from home. So basically, your cost will change depending on where you're flying from, right? And, the base. So what they're looking at is what it costs for a single supporter on a focus trip. They're using economy for their flights, 5 nights in a mid-range New York hotel, 1 match ticket at the tournament with an average price of $1,065. And before I continue, that's another thing as great as this World Cup has been, something I'm confused by is how are these stadiums so full and the tickets are so expensive. $1,000 is, let's call it between 16 and 18,000 Namibian dollars for a ticket to go watch a football match. And these stadiums have been, for the most part, packed. You know, Qatar World Cup, we saw some empty seats in some of the matches. Here, we're talking about matches like, Jordan against Iran, and matches like that where you would think these are smaller nations. You don't expect the stadium to be as full, but they have been packed. So, I don't know if it's Americans taking up an interest in the sport, or if people from these countries are flying over to watch, or if there's people from the countries living in America, taking the decision to go watch their teams play. But after this World Cup, I would like to further investigate how are people managing to afford their stay in the US and their tickets to these games. And then they said, okay, average price of $1,065 for the tickets and a modest daily budget for food and the subway, that is the public transport. So, we start with let's start with Tunisia, right? With Tunisia, the match day ticket, as we said, it will be $1,065 for everyone. Food and transport, $500. A hotel, you're looking at, for 5 nights, you're looking at $1,250. A round trip from Tunis to NYC, that's New York, $540. Algeria, exact same price, $540. You go to Morocco, from Casablanca to New York, $565. We're looking at Egypt. Now the price is starting to go up. We're looking at $600 US dollars. If you were traveling from Ghana, that would put you at 760 US dollars, a round trip flight ticket from Accra to NYC. If you are traveling from Cape Verde, if you are one of the Cape Verdeans attending the 2026 FIFA World Cup, flying to New York for 5 days, you would pay 800 US dollars. If you're flying from South Africa, surprisingly not that much more, 840 US dollars. If you're flying from Senegal, somehow it's cheaper to fly from South Africa to New York than it is to fly from Senegal. I assume that's because there's a direct flight. I don't think there's a direct flight from Dakar to New York. But anyways, that will cost you 880 US dollars. If you're flying from Cote d'Ivoire, from Abidjan, 970 US dollars. And if you're flying from the Congo, I think we can expect this one, 1,300 US dollars is the flight fare, and that costs, in Namibian dollars, that is around 21,000 Namibian dollars. So if you were to rank all of these, the most expensive travel package, that is now if we include food, if we include food, transit, if we include the match ticket, and if we include the hotel, the Congolese fans are paying 4,115 US dollars. And all of this, by the way, is excluding that ridiculous visa fee bond that some of these countries have to pay. I know DR Congo is on that list as well. Our good friend, one of our favorite supporters, the guy that mimics the Prime Minister Lumumba, he's only able to attend the matches whether it's in Canada or in Mexico. The US is not letting him in, right? So that will cost a Congolese fan 4,115. The cheapest on this list is it's a tie between Tunisia and Algeria. They pay around 3,355 US dollars. So again, my question is, which people in the world in general are really able to afford to attend this World Cup? Because the prices are astonishing. And it's really catered towards people in high income economies. Or if they're not in high income economies, high earners in whatever respective economy that they are from. I mean, for example, we know that 4,000 is an amount that, actually we can look this up. Let me not estimate. The average monthly salary in the DRC is approximately 50 to 55 US dollars. So if we're using the price of let's round it off to 4,000, and let's say 55. So on average, according to Wise, on average, a Congolese makes 660 US dollars per year. The person would need to work for save up everything they earn on average, according to Wise, everything they earn for over 6 years to be able to attend the FIFA World Cup. That's how expensive this World Cup has been. Just to put it in simple terms for you. Now the number in the studio is 083-288-401. That is 083-288-401. We will take a short musical break and then we will come back on the other side of this to round up our World Cup discussion. Don't forget you can comment on our social media as well if you'd like to share any comments, questions, or concerns surrounding this World Cup. Let us know, who do you think is going to win tonight between Bafana and Canada? First time, actually it's the first time for both nations that they're making the knockout stage. So whoever advances will continue to make history in the tournament. And unfortunately for Canada, this match is not taking place in Canada, even though they are a co-hosting nation. This match is taking place in the USA. So it'll be interesting to see what the stadium will look like in terms of supporters. One would think that the Canadians will fill it up, but South Africa has shown up in numbers as well. So we will see. We'll be back on the other side of this.